Good afternoon, Matthew Welch, November 10th, 2021. This is going to be my Module 8 video presentation for clinical anatomy. I'm choosing to do mine on the central nervous system. So first, I just want to give a brief anatomical overview of the central nervous system, which can consist of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain lies superior to the spinal cord, which lies inferior to it. The brain itself has a lot of very important structures on it, but just to name a few, we have the cerebrum and the cerebellum, and well as the brain being divided up into multiple different areas, left hemisphere and right hemisphere, which is divided by the longitudinal fissure. You have the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital regions of the brain. Each of those regions really plays a different role when it comes to sensory and motor processes, memory, and things like that. Internally, you have things like the limbic system, which is responsible for a lot of our basic kind of instinct functions, as well as a lot of glands that exist within the cerebellum. The cerebrum, and the internal part of the brain. Things like the thalamus and the hypothalamus and the pineal and the pituitary gland, which assists in hormone regulation and control. Line just below that again, exiting through the foramen magnum, is the spinal cord, which is kind of a continuous with the brain itself, as well as the meninges that cover the brain are also continuous. There's ventricles that are continuous with the spinal cord, and cerebral spinal fluid that all kind of circulates through that entire central nervous system. Going down that spinal cord, you have a lot of important structures. You have different tracks for afferent, efferent, somatic, and motor, and sensory, and autonomic nervous intervention and function, both nerves that are leaving and coming in and receiving and sending information. So quite complex to cover all that in a short video, but very interesting. The reason this neurology and the central nervous system interests me is because as a paramedic, I see a lot of neurological emergencies, and a lot of times we have to make a decision about what's going on inside the patient's body without having any other tests or things like CTs or MRIs that we can utilize. But so much of what we see presenting on the outside of a patient, like vital signs and facial droop and weakness and pupil response, we can really determine quite a bit what's going on within the central nervous system. So that's very interesting to me. I think that's an important part of medicine. The clinical specialty for this organ system would be a neurologist, and the surgical specialty would be a neurosurgeon. I think that having a good understanding of the central nervous system is critical to understanding all the other outlying body systems, just because that central nervous system, one way or another, is going to help control those outlying systems, whether it's the kidneys or through hormone responses, or it's cardiac muscle through nerve intervention, skeletal muscle. I mean, so many different, or really all the different muscle groups in the body are going to be controlled by the central nervous system. So if you can understand how the body does that, you can understand quite a bit about the other organ systems in the body. So that's my quick overview of the central nervous system. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.